Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name is Jeff Thomas, and I've got my trusty sidekick with me, Jeff Rutt. Say hello to the people, Jeff.
Hello to the people.
And we have a very special guest this week, Bob Collins, an old friend from Tampa, Florida, but he spends a lot of time in airplanes these days, and you're going to hear why. But Bob is the CEO of TrustBridge, which is really kind of an international-focused donor-advised fund. But he had a whole career on Wall Street and some other a long stop at National Christian Foundation. You'll hear about his background, but I just want to welcome you, Bob, to the program today.
Yes, pleasure to be here. Real privilege. Thanks.
It's going to be fun. All right, Jeff, kick us off.
Yeah, welcome, Bob. Bob, start us off. Tell us a little bit about the early years in the Collins household, spiritual formation, household, any fun entrepreneurial stories or fun adventures growing up, and then take us into the school years.
Yeah. So, well, actually, I was born and raised in North Carolina. My parents got divorced when I was fairly young. I think I was about 2. So I really didn't have, let's say a traditional kind of nuclear family type experience growing up. It was pretty humble beginnings as well. In fact, anytime I get too full of myself, my wife likes to remind me that, you were a barefoot hillbilly in the mountains of North Carolina. Don't get too excited, And yeah, so my origins were fairly humble. In terms of spiritual formation, I wasn't born and raised in a church and didn't grow up in a church context. So, by the time I got into university level, I was pretty hardcore atheist, just not really thinking that there was anything supernatural in the world. And so, I was just kind of operating out of that. At the same time, of course, just pursuing achievement, getting through university as fast as possible. My first job out of university, I think my first day on the job was 2 days after my last day of classes. And I was 21 years old, graduating early, moving fast, in the investment banking department at Raymond James at the time.
Okay.
And so, yeah, my life was just all about achievement and trying to find my way in the world. Yeah.
Tell us about so when did you meet your wife, and tell us about your kids.
Yeah, so we have 5 children and 2 grandchildren at this point. And our youngest is 28 years old. Our oldest is 33. I hope I got that right. And so, yeah, our kids are grown, out of the house, starting to have grandchildren. So my wife Tricia and I met actually at work. So this is many years later. I was 29, I believe, and so we actually worked together, and then we hit it off. And crazy story is we were dating, and then one night, actually, I'd become a Christian. So so in that transition, so we started dating. I wasn't a Christian. We dated for almost 2 years, and I became a Christian. And then I was really convicted that we need to do the right thing. And so we were out to dinner one night, and I told Tricia, I said, you know what we should do? We should just go fly tonight to Las Vegas and get married right now. And she said, okay. So we literally left the restaurant. This was pre-internet days. So I called ahead on my cell phone to a travel agent, got tickets on a flight to Las Vegas, and then we flew out there, got married actually the next morning, not that night. But Yeah, it was so when I became a Christian, it was I would say somewhat of an all or nothing experience.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Wow. You
Wow,
hear
wow, we're on.
about,
That is an awesome story. But we got to go back to, okay, what you got to tell us the conversion story. Like, how did you go from atheist to believer?
Yeah, well, I guess it was a couple things. One is I was a hardcore atheist. I really thought that the Bible was just a bunch of like fairy tales and stories that weren't true. And I think God was working on me, was working on my heart, and He challenged me. I didn't realize it was Him at the time, but I just remember feeling some sort of conviction that it wasn't intellectually honest to dismiss something if you didn't know anything about it, right?
Right,
And so
right.
I actually started reading the Bible with the intention to be able to say, okay, I read it. I still believe it's all fairy tales and I can move on with life. But of course, that's not what really happens.
hmm,
So, I started reading some of the Old Testament and then I skipped to the New Testament and I read Matthew, Mark, and I got about halfway through Luke and I just had this kind of scales falling from the eyes experience
wow.
Wow.
where I just suddenly it just hit me that it was all true.
Wow.
And so then, very rapidly I started making big changes in my life, including getting married.
That is powerful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
But, it
Okay.
wasn't me. I don't want to say, oh, I
No,
figured this
no, but no,
out.
no, but it's
No.
like, but at some point, as one guy I like to listen to, he says, at some point, the arguments at least have to shrink, right? Maybe all the doubts don't always completely go away, if we're honest, but they have to, the analogy I heard is like a guy was talking about, I'm never going to get married, you know? And then the next thing you know, he's telling his buddies he's engaged. And they're like, "What are you talking about? What? I thought you didn't want to get married." He's like, "Yeah, but have you met her? Like, it's not like all those concerns about like losing control and having to be accountable and all that. They didn't go away. They just shrunk. Have you met the person? So it's like
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like I like that the way you describe that. I like the veil falling away. It's like
Scales. Yeah. Yeah. Scales falling
maybe
off, right?
yeah. How do you unpack that a little bit more? I mean, we don't have to spend the whole time on this, but I'm just how would you describe that feeling?
It was just a very sudden
Yeah,
realization. Again, I went from thinking this is all just baloney to suddenly realizing it was all true. I mean, it was like a 5-second moment. Yeah, I mean, by God's grace, he was very patient with me when I was this hardcore atheist and probably
yeah,
saying all kinds of things about him. And and just, revealing that to me. Again, I don't claim any credit for it. I mean, he did it to me.
Hmm.
And I just praise God that he did. Yeah.
Praise God is right.
so I know you also spent time at Goldman Sachs. How do you what's the path from Raymond James Investment Banking to Goldman?
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. I started off in investment banking with Raymond James, and then I moved to their investment management business. And actually, in the late 90s, we did an employee buyout of that investment management business and set it up as a separate company. And then we were independent for a couple of years, and then we sold to Goldman Sachs Asset Management. And so then we were absorbed into Goldman Sachs and even within Goldman's, by the way, I like to say that Goldman never would have hired me. I mean, I just don't have the pedigree. I didn't go to Wharton or Harvard or whatever. But, once I was inside at Goldman, I actually did quite well. I was able to progress up the corporate ladder and ultimately was managing director in their division in London, heading up their global equities management business. So it was all going great. But, I had been feeling for a while that this was not the life that God wanted for me. I tend to be an all or nothing kind of a guy, and I was just like all in, working all the time. Our children were between 5 and 12 years old at the time. And, um, and, I was just working all day, every day, all weekends, traveling all the time. And so, I think God convicted me, and my wife helped convict me
Yeah.
that I need to get on a different path, or else I was just going to blow it as a father and a husband. And so, yeah, so I retired in 2002, and so that was like the first chapter of my career was 17 years in that business.
Okay.
Mm.
Were you living in London?
Yeah, yeah, we were living in London at the time, moved back to Tampa Bay at that point. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's interesting, a little bit of the full circle international flavor
yeah, yeah,
here. So, all right. So you hang it up in '02. Sounds like you're on the grind. Nobody's too happy about it. You retire, but you're like 40.
yeah. I was 38.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So that sounds like the I'm retiring to spend more time with the family at 38. That's not going to stick. So we got to and I have a feeling Mama doesn't want you there either all day every day. So you
yeah.
got to figure out what next to do. What was that process like of trying to figure out what to do next?
Yeah, it was difficult. I had a lot of options. I could certainly go back into the business world. I could go back into specifically investment management. A lot of people that go through, kind of the progression I went through when they retire, generally older, but when they retire, they set up their own family office. They have their
Exactly.
own family foundation, their
Yeah.
family office for investments. They have a staff and all that stuff. And um, I was considering going down the same path. But, part of what is transpiring along this journey is I got connected with the National Christian Foundation. I believe it was in 1999 or 2000. So it was really early on. And they invited me to a conference. This was before Generous Giving, or right around the time Generous Giving was starting. But this conference was kind of like a Generous Giving conference, except maybe a little bit more hands-on as it relates to NCF. And so I started hearing these stories of generosity that I'd never heard before. I mean, I'd heard one time a long time ago, oh, there's this guy and he's a reverse tither and he gives away
Right.
90%, keeps 10%. And I always thought, well, that's just some urban legend. I mean, that's
Right.
not real, you
Can't
know.
be real. Yeah.
And so, but at this NCF thing, I actually met some of those people and heard some of those stories, and that really changed my paradigm of thinking about giving. So, prior to that point, I was, what they used to call a tickled tither. I
Yeah.
would I
Mm.
would give 10%. I'd be really proud of myself for giving 10%. And then after that, yeah, it was like, oh yeah, this is very, very different than what I expected, and actually very exciting. And I got a lot of joy out of thinking about, oh yeah, I could go far beyond that. I could do so much more. And so anyway, that was going on. So when I was thinking about, oh, should I create my own private family foundation and family office and all this stuff, I decided instead, I said, my giving would be like a drop in the ocean. I mean, it really
Yeah.
would be insignificant, the amount of giving I could do personally. But if I use that to catalyze and open an NCF office in Tampa Bay, um, then it could do so much more. It could be leveraged, it could be multiplied. And we could create this, donor advised fund type foundation, which would be a resource for the entire community. And one thing is interesting, I didn't think about it until just now, but literally any day now, the National Christian Foundation Tampa Bay office will cross the $1 billion
Hmm.
threshold in giving
Wow.
facilitated.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Praise God.
and that's been
Easy.
what, a little bit over 20 years. Um, and so, yeah, so if you think about what my giving, I mean, my giving would be
Well, they finally caught up to you, so that's
tiny
nice.
fraction. But it ultimately helped catalyze, what is now a
Yeah.
billion counting in giving. So yeah, so that's how I made that transition. So I had a lot of options and I looked at a lot of different things, but ultimately was drawn to the National Christian Foundation. partly because of my passion around generosity, but partly because I could really use my skills in that. So what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to, I don't know, be an usher at a church or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I mean, I had some very particular skills and experience and training, and I could really use it to its fullest at the National Christian Foundation because a lot of what we do is we come alongside business owners and families and we consult with them on tax strategies and how to get more out of their giving and release more into the kingdom. And a lot of that is related to business structuring and setting things up ahead of the sale of a business and all these things. And so that was like right in my wheelhouse. So I was very excited about that.
Well, that's interesting because I think as we were talking before we started recording today, having met a lot of the NCF presidents, which uh, including that's how we met in Tampa years ago. But not all of them have a kind of I think, you were like co-CIO of the, Goldman Sachs Asset Management. I mean, they don't really have an investment management background. So I'm surprised that you felt like those, even though you know business well and you analyze companies, I assume, as co-CIO, how did what skills do you think translated for you?
I think, yeah, I think one would be just having operated at I mean, this may not sound humble, but having operated at a very high level, I mean, I
Yeah,
was a very senior person on one of the biggest stages in the world.
yeah.
And the clients that we had were big name corporations and big name wealthy families. And just having a lot of experience working with folks like that made it easy to work with business owners and wealthy families, in this capacity. So that, and yeah, I think there's just a lot of general business learning that I picked up in terms of structuring transactions and tax and all that stuff.
Well,
Uh,
and
so,
you were part of a company that did get sold.
mhm.
So I mean, you did have that transaction. It's just less of sort of the accounting, legal side, more of really like a just around sophisticated business. I mean, which is
Yeah, yeah.
it's just interesting.
Actually, now that you mention it, I'd totally forgotten about that. But early on, my own story in selling our business to Goldman,
Yeah,
I remember very vividly how stressful that
yeah,
was and how like every tiny thing you were worried about. And so I could identify with these business owners that were like, "Hey, I'm in the middle of selling my business out. This is like a once in a lifetime thing. Is this charitable thing going to mess everything up?" And I could say, look,
exactly.
no, I know exactly where you're at. I know exactly what you're talking about. And we can make it work. Don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So was illiquid giving for people selling their companies a big part of? You were probably involved in a lot of those transactions during your time with NCF in Tampa. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's definitely something that we've talked a lot about. All right, so 16 years doing that, and then you get to TrustBridge. Tell us about TrustBridge. How did that? Well, I guess there was an interim step there
Yeah.
where you set up a little investment company to do some private deals. Maybe tell us about that interim and then the TrustBridge story.
Yeah. So yeah, along the way, I was running the Tampa Bay office of National Christian Foundation. And I was really getting into this impact investing. This was,
Yes.
I don't know how long ago, 10 or so years ago. And a lot of people were talking about it. And I felt like, huh, that actually, again, really fits with my background and my experience. And I think it's something new and different. And I was open and interested for something new and different. And so I actually launched a small private equity fund that focuses on buyouts. And the reason why it focuses on buyouts is because I wanted to acquire controlling interest in companies so that I could just run them the way that we wanted to run them. As purely Christian run companies with all the ministry involved in the companies and all that. And also we were looking for business opportunities where we had interaction with the poor. So we bought three companies, two of which were right in there. where one was a chain of laundromats.
Yep.
And so not only our employees, but also our customers were, you know, the poor kind of mass market customer. Um, and then the other one was a home healthcare business where again the employees were um, nurses, assistants, or just very low level folks. And then, of course, our clients, our patients, were also generally not doing that well. And so it was a great opportunity for ministry. I really love that. And so one example, when you think about like, because I know that the theme
Yeah.
here is, generosity now,
Right.
like what do you do in
Exactly.
your business to be generous? So for instance, the home healthcare business to me was fascinating because it's most of your revenues come from Medicare, Medicaid,
Mm,
and private insurers. And so your reimbursement rates were set, and a lot of the focus of the business was just on controlling cost. But what we, in our analysis, what we discovered is that a well-run home healthcare business would have about a 10% EBITDA margin.
mm,
And we felt like we could do better than that. But what we decided was we're going to cap our EBITDA margin at 10%. And then whatever we could do above that, we will devote to charitable giving, to an employee assistance fund, and actually also to a patient assistance fund. And so we were on our path. I didn't own it for very long because, this trust bridge thing that's about to happen. But we owned it for a couple of years, and we were just on that path to break through that. And I was very excited about that. But to me, that was an interesting mental model. Like if you're in a particular business, let's say you're a home builder, and there's kind of a generally accepted margin
Yeah.
standard in the
yep.
business. And I don't know what that is. Let's
Mhm.
just say it is 10%. And let's say you're particularly well run and you've got a great culture and your people are, entrepreneurial and energized, and you could do 15% margin. So then, that then opens up that thinking about, yeah, maybe we could, instead of just trying to drive as high as we can, we just
Mhm.
say, hey, to whatever extent we can drive higher than the industry standard, we'll just reinvest in our people,
Mhm.
or in this case, in our patients. It was an interesting idea. Anyway.
I love that. I
Oh
love
yeah.
that. You said it in
Yeah.
advance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like setting a financial finish line, but it has to
Yeah.
do with
Exactly.
your margins and not, yeah, not your profits,
Personal.
really. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So tell us about the transition to TrustBridge.
Yeah. So I was doing this, and then Greg Sperry, one of the gift planning attorneys at NCF, he was working on this project for basically a global version of the National Christian Foundation. And this is where my past experience comes in because he said, I need somebody who understands, international banking in Europe, who can help us kind of navigate this. And so I said, sure, I'll help you. I made a couple of connections, got them introduced to a couple of banks, actually traveled with them to Switzerland to attend these meetings with banks. And it was on that trip that I realized that this was what I needed to do.
Mhm.
As I understood and saw the vision, as I also understood and saw that my background was, particularly well suited for this, and they needed somebody to kind of put this project kind of on their shoulders and push it forward.
Yeah.
Everybody else had their day job, and they
Yeah.
were
Right.
working on this part time, and they needed somebody to commit and go with it. And so I said, you know what? Even though I've done all this stuff, I'm gonna sell these companies. I'm gonna shut down the private equity firm, and I'm just gonna go all in on TrustBridge. And so, yeah, so that's what happened.
All in again. I like it. Yeah, most people probably would have kept a couple of those companies, to be honest with you. Okay. So I kind of like this all in nature. Uh, okay. So tell us what they do. Why would somebody need TrustBridge as opposed to NCF or in association?
So if you're giving to a foreign charity and you're wanting to get a tax deduction in your home country, let's say here in the US, what you find is there's a lot of hurdles and obstacles. There's compliance with IRS rules, there's banking issues, there's due diligence and compliance on the receiving country and the charity in the receiving country, um, and so a lot of people look at that and all the expense and hurdles and just throw up their hands and say, "I'm just not going to give."
Not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it. It's too complicated. I can't figure it out. And obviously, our purpose, what we're trying to do is to make global giving easy so
Okay.
that you can give to a school in Africa as easily as you could give to your church down the street. And the idea is if we can do that, then more money will flow to the areas of the world that need it the most. And so that's been happening. So we're almost 10 years in now, and we've just crossed $600 million in giving facilitated through TrustBridge. And yeah, it's gone to charities all over the world, thousands of charities, and I think 104 different countries. So it's working. I mean, people are definitely wanting to use us and give through us because the alternative is a lot of expense and hassle and time and yeah, and we just make it easy. So
Do
that's
they do
kind of the
they
short answer.
does the giver set up a donor advised fund through TrustBridge directly, and then kind of like NCF, you have an online giving account that you can
They
direct
can,
it,
but
or
that's
how does it
not, I
work?
mean, yeah, most people they have their NCF giving fund
Right.
or Signatory or wherever, and even Fidelity or wherever,
Sure.
and then they get us connected with the charity. We diligence the charity, we approve them, get them set up. The charity has its fund with TrustBridge, and
Okay.
then they just then give into the charity's fund. So they
Okay.
don't have to open a DAF with us. They can just get the charity set up and then they can give into that charity fund. But one of the cool things is once the charity goes through that process and they get that initial donation from that initial donor, that fund still exists, and they can direct other givers from other regions of the world because they can take in a donation from anybody anywhere in the world through that fund and then draw it down to their charity. And we give them a link so that they can share it out on social media and on their website and all that. So all the people do is just have to click on that link and then give to the charity fund, and then it goes to the charity.
Is there a bridge built from NCF? So if I go on my NCF account, I haven't done this, but so are you putting funds that you vetted on the NCF platform?
Not the actual like charity by charity, but
Yeah.
there is an easy path. So when
Okay.
you want to give from NCF, you just search and find TrustBridge as the recipient, and you make the grant to TrustBridge, and you just put in the memo line which charity you want it to go to,
I
and
got you.
it's
I
super.
got you. Okay,
Yeah.
so it just crosses to TrustBridge, and then you make that connection
Mhm.
externally. Wow, that's pretty slick. So you don't really have to open a second account even.
That's right. No,
So
you don't.
maybe share a story with us of, if you don't mind, a story or two about maybe even a business owner who has used this service, and what drew them to doing something international. Do you have a story or two to share?
Yeah, there's a guy, and I'm not violating any
Yeah,
secrets
yeah, yeah.
because he's been public about this, but there's a guy, Don Campion. I don't know if you've heard that name
Heard the
before,
name.
but he um, he was the son of a missionary couple that were in Africa for many, many years, and they got a hospital going in Africa called Egby Hospital. And as their parents got older, um, the hospital started to fall into disrepair and wasn't adequately funded. And he went there on a trip and was just completely struck by this. He's like, this is a family legacy. This is a great hospital and it needs help. And so he went back to the States. He started giving personally, and he also started rallying other people to support this hospital and rebuilding it and modernizing it and getting it back up to standard. And and after a few years of that, then somehow he got connected to TrustBridge. I think somebody in NCF told him about TrustBridge,
Mm.
and he was just amazed because he was spending, like I say, he was spending all this time and money and effort
Trying to
trying
figure
to
it
get the
out.
money over,
Yeah, right.
and we only charge 1% at TrustBridge. And so I think he said that the quote in his story was that, we're saving him like 30% on the money that he was spending to get
Right.
over there.
Wow. Wow.
So it's just saving an enormous amount of money, plus just the convenience of it and the ease now that he can invite other people to giving to support the hospital. So, yeah, so we solved his problem. Obviously, we've helped the charity. We've got before and after pictures of the hospital. You
Yeah,
should not believe the progress that they've made over the last 4 or 5 years. It's really amazing.
that's cool. What's something maybe unexpected that you've learned from doing this? I mean, I know you lived in London, did international business before, but you're exposed to a lot more things around the globe that are happening. So take this question wherever you want to take it, but maybe what's something that surprised you in the last 10 years of doing this that you didn't know about, maybe international giving or something around there?
Yeah, I would say probably one of the biggest things that I guess is certainly a little bit of a surprise is the rise of collaborative giving. And so
Mm,
just
Mm.
in the last few years, we've really seen that start to take off, where groups of givers will come together and say, we want to focus on a particular geography or a cause area like clean water or something like that. A lot of people, of course, are already familiar with every tribe, every nation, the Bible translation effort. I think that's a good example of where you can just get hyper focused on a big, exciting vision, and that draws a lot of giving in, and they're doing that very collaboratively. And we're seeing the same thing, like I say, in certain geographies or in certain cause areas, and major funders are coming together. And so one of the things I guess what you might say is surprising is that I would have expected that the smaller, less experienced funders would be more interested in collaborative giving than the
mm.
larger experienced funders. But it's actually just the opposite, which to me is fascinating. It's like if you're brand new, you're like, oh, I can do this. I don't need or want to collaborate. But if you've been doing it for 20 or 30 years, you're like, I absolutely want to collaborate.
Uh-huh.
So it's fascinating. I think you've been around long enough to see the complexity and
Right.
the art of giving well, and to come alongside others and work with them and benefit from their wisdom and vice versa. I think that's a big thing that's happening around the world.
Yeah, it's almost like the more you know, the more you realize what you don't know.
Right.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Bob, I'd love to hear you. You have 5 children.
Yes.
Tell us about you've worked in major, Wall Street, these, funds and NCF and TrustBridge. Tell us about the impact that that's had through the years on your family, and how do you I'm sure there's not you don't share all the complexities with the new grandkids, but tell us about. I always like to ask, how do we get this to the next gen? How do we
Yeah.
tell
Yeah,
us.
I'm probably more of a cautionary tale than a success story in that. So, number one, none of my children followed in my footsteps, much to my disappointment. I was really hoping at least one or two of them would get into investment management because I think I could have got them on a really strong career path. But but yeah, I think, in talking to my children now that they're more grown up, um, I actually think, they would say that it was too intimidating,
Mhm.
and I don't know what I did to do this, but I'm sure you guys could point it out. But but they just felt like trying to do what I did. There was just no way that they could
Mm.
have the same
Hmm.
level of achievement, so maybe they just didn't even try.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there's probably a lesson in there somewhere. But yeah,
Well,
somehow my my achievement, my success, especially early in my career,
mm.
really actually made it more difficult for my children to get involved. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I want to go maybe a slightly different direction. What advice do you have for individuals that are looking to encourage their kids and grandkids to get involved in just in generosity in general? Before you do that, I think my father was also disappointed that I didn't pursue dairy farming. So I don't think it's that uncommon.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tried
Well,
it. I
you've
tried
done
for a few years.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, well, I think really the hands-on engagement to me comes first.
Hmm.
So I've really tried. I mean, we've certainly taken our children on missions trips. I think a lot of people do that.
Hmm.
We try to get engagement in local charities or church-related things um, where their heart can be captured by the work that's being done. And the money part of it, I don't know that I've totally figured that out. I did the thing a lot of people have done where I've created donor advised funds for my children. I put the money in there. I can't say that that was a great success story. I think for other people it's been super successful, but for me it was not. So I guess I'm still a little bit on that journey, but it's got to start with their hearts and their
Yeah.
desire to give and be a blessing to others.
Yeah.
If without that, it doesn't make any sense to part with your money. Right?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, good for you for getting and you've traveled well internationally already. I'm sure your kids are seeing the world as a small place. It's a small world. But having them get out to the mission field and have that direct connection is where it starts.
So, Bob, as we kind of go toward the end, as you know, we always like to ask the kind of same final question of all our guests, which is just, we sort of picture a business owner who's maybe having some success now, and they got to pick one path or the other, one that kind of blesses others primarily, or full consumption, and so, as they're trying to think about that, and you kind of have this big arc of a story, and but to just kind of break it down into maybe a practical tip or two, what comes to mind for somebody, some business owner behind you on the journey that just wants to take a step in the what we would call the right direction?
Yeah, yeah. When I was managing director at Goldman, I was making a pretty good living, and also had visibility to making enormous amounts of money.
Yeah.
And I retired, and went through some period of transition, which was not easy. And going backwards in life, going backwards in your spending and other lifestyle things is it's a difficult experience. It's not free of pain, but I can say honestly that it was the best decision I ever made.
Mm.
We don't live a lifestyle that is anywhere close to the lifestyle that we were living or could live today if I'd stayed on that career path. But I don't regret that for a second.
Mm.
And I think the richness in relationships and sense of purpose and fulfillment in what I'm doing, and all just knowing all the millions of people that we've helped around the world by facilitating generosity. That means way, way more than a nicer vacation or flying in a private jet instead of commercial and all that stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's it, it's always a leap of faith, but I would tell people if you're at that crossroads where you're trying to, like you say, choose between full consumption and generosity, I can guarantee you will not regret choosing the generous path.
Hmm.
Because not only for me and my own story, but I have now met and worked with easily 1,000 business owners and wealthy families, and I've never met one who said, Oh yeah, that was a big mistake. I never should have been so generous. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I've got
Good
this
word.
picture of, I like this word of this visualization of moving backwards.
Mhm.
It's kind of like what the world considers backwards. Perhaps God has in mind for you to move forward,
Absolutely, yes.
by a different scorecard. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
So what the world considers stepping back might be stepping forward from a different viewpoint. So I just love that, and we have a lot of the same background. So I know the pictures, the world you've seen, and I'm just really thrilled for you on the journey you've been on, and it's really an inspiration to many. And so I just thank you for the work you do, continue to do with families to help them live that life. And
Yeah.
really thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Amen.
Praise God. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and Jeff, thanks as always. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
thank.
It's a
Go ahead,
pleasure
Jeff. Sorry.
being hearing more of your story, Bob. Thank you. That's quite a journey. And thinking of the titles here, from North Carolina, the scales come off. You got to raise $1 billion, and then Trust Bridge, and it's all in. I can't wait to see what happens next.
Right. Right. Just getting started. Just getting
That's
started.
right.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for being with us on this week's Generous Business Owner podcast. Share it with a friend, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.